And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, April 8th. We have a lot to cover on the show today, like we normally do. But before I get into all that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to recap the national championship game from last night. The Florida Gators winning the national championship, knocking off the Houston Cougars. Very entertaining game last night. Came down to the final play of the game, although there was not a shot that was put up. We will get into it. So Florida ended up winning last night. They defeated Houston 65-63. So we'll get into that in just a second. In the second part of the show, we will talk more about the NFL draft. So there were reports that the Browns could end up drafting Travis Hunter. So we will get into that and talk about the Giants. They're also going to be meeting with Abdul Carter. Talk about Shedeur Sanders a little bit. Also the running backs, because this is a very rich running back class for this upcoming draft. We'll get into all that. Then we'll talk more about the Torpedo bats. I wanted to talk about what Rob Manfred, the commissioner, had to say on the topic. And I was originally going to talk about it yesterday, but, the Vladimir Guerrero stuff came out, so, the contract stuff. So I had to bump that to today. Then we will talk about the Cowboys acquiring Joe Milton. We talked about that when it was reported last week, but I just wanted to give you my thoughts on that. And then in the final part of the show, we will talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll do a season overview on the Kansas City Chiefs, how their season went, and what they've done in the offseason. And that will be the final season overview that we do. We have covered every single team in the NFL. So, like I said yesterday, we got to figure out what we're going to talk about in that fifth segment. So, let's get into the first topic, which is recapping the national championship game. So, like I said, it was a very entertaining game. And it kind of went similar to how Florida's games have gone in this tournament. They have trailed in these games, and they find a way to come back and win, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. And I had that same feeling throughout the entire second half. Now, I think the deficit got to as much as 12, I want to say. Houston was leading for the majority of the game. And Florida didn't come back by, these barrage of three-pointers like we saw against Texas Tech, for example. It was different. Now, the one thing I'll say is in the first half was, their best player, Walter Clayton Jr. He was scoreless in the first half. Couldn't get anything going. Houston was doing a great job. They were making things difficult for him. And like I said, did not score in the first half. Will Richard, though, and it was talked about constantly on the telecast, he really stepped up in the first half. He kept Florida in this game. Now, at the half, the score was 31-28. So, game was still in reach. Like I said, Houston, widened their gap at certain points during the game, but Florida was able to come back and win this game. L.J. Cryer, once again, a good performance for him, 19 points. He went 6 of 18 from the field, which is not great, but, was their leading scorer for the Cougars last night. But like I said, it was a very entertaining game. And, we've been saying Florida is battle-tested. It's just they are never out of a game. And once again, they showed that last night by coming back. But, yeah, they were down 12 points in the second half. They trailed 42-30 with 15:48 left in the game. They tied the game at 60 with less than 3 minutes left to play. Couple of free throws by Elijah Martin. That gave Florida the lead. Free throws, we've talked about this in the tournament. I mean, they are an essential part of winning these games, because we saw in the Final Four games, you know, you miss it, and that could very well dictate whether you win a game or not. I mean, we saw that with Tyrese Proctor missing it, but yeah, Houston was able to put up a final shot. Well, actually, no, Houston got the ball, and they had a chance to, tie the game or possibly go ahead with a three-pointer, but they could not get a shot off. They couldn't get a shot off. Florida played really good defense on the final play of the game, and Emmanuel Sharp was putting up the shot, but it was an up and down if he touched the ball again. So he just let the ball just sit there, and Florida was able to jump on it. Condon was able to secure it, and that was basically the end of the game. So we didn't get to see a final shot. I was hoping the game would go into overtime to add more excitement to it, but that ended up not happening. Florida was not good in the first half when it came to turnovers. They had 9 first-half turnovers. Their lowest scoring first half in a title game since 2011. And we talked about deficits. So, yeah, they were down 6 in the round of 32. They were down 10 in the Elite 8, down 9 in the Final Four, and then they were down 12 in the title game. They came back against UConn. They came back against Texas Tech, against Auburn, and against Houston. They, like we said, they are battle tested, and it's just unfortunate for Houston. They have come so close these in recent years, and they had it. The game was in their grasp, and unfortunately, like the teams that have gone up against Florida, they let it fall between them. Todd Golden, head coach of Florida, won his first title, and the age difference. I mean, Golden is 39 years old, and Kelvin Sampson for Houston is 69 years old. He was denied his 800th win and the national title. And then looking at the stats, the comparisons to both teams, we can do that. They both didn't shoot the basketball great. Florida shot at about 40%, Houston about 35%. Both teams were not good shooting the three. Florida was 6 of 24 from three. Houston was 6 of 25 from three. Free throws. Florida was 81% from the free throw line. Houston was 64%. Rebounds were about the same. Defensive rebounds, Florida was better than Houston, and offensive rebounds, Houston was better than Florida there. But yeah, turnovers. Florida did have 12. Houston had 8. And yeah, like I said, though, very entertaining game. It was a great way for the college basketball season to end. I did not win anything. My bracket tourneys, I got knocked out, because I had Duke in most of them. And then, I did have Houston in another one, and they lost. But I wasn't going to win. Had Houston won, I wouldn't have won anything. But, yeah, no, it was a good tournament. We saw some really good games down the stretch in this tournament. And I know there's a lot of people complaining because, we didn't really get to see, a Cinderella team go far, and, you saw all 1 seeds in the Final Four. But, we can't really make assumptions until we kind of see this, replicate itself. If we continue to see 1 seeds, next year and beyond that, then maybe there is a little bit of a problem. But you got the best of the best. And like I said, we saw some really good games over the weekend, and even before that. So yeah, college basketball is over, and congratulations to the Florida Gators on winning the title. Again, tough loss for Houston, They were right there. They were right there. They have gotten so close so many times in recent years, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen last night. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about the game from last night. Let me know in the comments. So, we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about the NFL draft. The draft is coming up. We got a couple weeks now. Now our focus is on that, along with some other things that are going to be starting soon, playoffs in the NBA and things like that. But the draft is coming up. A couple of things I wanted to talk about. We're going to talk about Travis Hunter maybe going to Cleveland. We'll talk about the Giants meeting with Abdul Carter. And, obviously, teams are going to meet with prospects, but you might not necessarily draft them. But we'll just get into that and, how adding a player like Abdul Carter would be beneficial for the Giants. And then, some other things, Shedeur Sanders, the running backs as well. We'll get into all that when we come back from our next break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about the NFL Draft. A couple of things, a couple of headlines that I wanted to get into. The main one was talking about Travis Hunter. Now, as a Giant fan, I want Travis Hunter. I want Travis Hunter. I want the Giants' approach for the draft. This is what I want. I want them to get him and then maybe take a quarterback in the later rounds. And it's going to all depend on, what Cleveland does, because it seems like, unless it's a smokescreen, Cam Ward is going to go to the Titans. Cam Ward is going to go to the Titans. They're going to move forward with him as their quarterback, if that ends up happening. But now it's what are the Browns going to do? Because, the quarterback position for the Browns right now, you got Kenny Pickett. Deshaun Watson is going to be a non-factor next year. So I don't know what their plan is there. So they could take Shedeur Sanders, but they could also say, hey, let's take Travis Hunter. Now, Travis Hunter, I think, for them, it would be best player available in their eyes. Like, I don't think Travis Hunter, I think they could go address other areas. Well, quarterback. I think quarterback is the main thing. Because, when you look at Travis Hunter, now, Andrew Berry said he would play primarily receiver. Now, I think receiver is kind of a need for the Browns. You got Jerry Jeudy there, but, it's kind of question marks after that. I know Cedric Tillman, he played well in some games last year, and then he got hurt. But, the wide receiver position's kind of thin when it comes to the Browns. So, if that's the case, then, maybe the Browns end up doing that. But who's going to be throwing them the ball? That's the only thing. And that's why, I wanted to also talk about the Giants are set to meet with Abdul Carter because, if the Browns end up taking Travis Hunter, then I think the Giants should then take Abdul Carter. And, that's an elite level prospect, another elite level prospect in this draft. And, the Giants, last year, I was excited about their defensive line. And, at times it did show flashes. But I think Abdul Carter can make a difference on this defensive line. Now, what it could do is, it could lead to is the Giants can end up trading Kayvon Thibodeau or make him a rotational player. And you'd pair Abdul Carter up with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. So, yeah, I mean, the Giants would continue to strengthen their defense if they end up doing that, which I would be okay with. But I just feel like when it comes to the Giants offense has been such a problem in recent years that I want to see them add as much offensive talent as possible. And especially going into this year where the Giants need to win games. For Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, they need to win games. And I think it's going to be more of a problem for them to score points as opposed to stopping teams. Because I do think when comparing the two units, the defense is better than the offense. Look at some of the games that they lost. The Bengals game, they gave up 17 points, but that game was 10-7 for most of the game. And, well, one of them was just Joe Burrow ran for a 50-yard touchdown or whatever it was. But I know at times the Giants defense, was not great. It was disappointing. Especially against their rivals. But this offense struggled to score points. They need to add more playmakers to this offense, and Travis Hunter could help both in the secondary, which is part of the defense that that really struggled last year, and you add to the offense. You add another weapon to pair with Malik Neighbors. So I don't know. That's how I look at it. But I would be happy with Abdul Carter. I just think that they should take one of those two players and not reach on a quarterback. Wait on a quarterback until the later rounds. But, again, the Browns, it could be a smokescreen. They could take Abdul Carter and pair him up with Myles Garrett, which I kind of hope that happens. Because, I want Travis Hunter. But we'll have to wait and see. The Browns, they could go the Browns and the Giants could do different things. Maybe the Titans throw us a curveball, they trade down, they don't take Cam Ward. We will find out in a couple of weeks. But right now, it's all speculation. Right? So then that leaves with Shedeur Sanders. So I know Shedeur Sanders has been, receiving, heat from, certain people around the league, because of, his attitude and things like that. Look, I think that, for me, I would be happy if the Giants ended up with Shedeur Sanders. I wouldn't complain about that, but I just think the way things are with this quarterback class, I want to see, one of the top non-quarterbacks be taken. But yeah, it's just I can't really say I'm heavily evaluating Shedeur Sanders, and look, I get it. Deion Sanders is his dad, and with that comes a lot of attention. But I feel like there's more positives coming out of the Shedeur Sanders camp as opposed to negatives. And what could end up happening with Shedeur Sanders? Could he end up falling in the draft? I feel like he's going to go within the first 5 picks. I think the Raiders could be a team that potentially ends up with him if he falls to them. But then again, Geno Smith signed an extension. So, they could go best player available at that pick. But I'd be really curious to see what happens if Shedeur Sanders falls. Because then, there's also the Jets. They could be a possibility, but they seem like they're committed to Justin Fields. So I think that's another team that's going to take best player available. And then you got the Patriots, and we'll talk about them a little bit later, but they already have their quarterback. So, you kind of look, you take a look at, so like the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants, they all need quarterbacks. The Patriots don't. The Jaguars don't. Raiders, I think, still do, but they could take best player available. The Jets, maybe, but they could be committed to Fields. The Panthers, no. The Saints. The Saints could be a team that could land Shedeur Sanders. Because, Derek Carr has kind of been a disappointment. I don't know if I think they like Spencer Rattler, but I don't know if they like him to the point where that they believe that he's the franchise guy. So that's a possibility. But yeah, you go down you keep going down. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The Steelers, it's possible. But I don't think I would be surprised if Shedeur Sanders falls all the way down to the 20s. He's going to go within, I believe, the first, I said 5. I think within the first 7 picks. If not, maybe the Saints. But then that also leads me to running backs. Because we had this conversation in our production meeting. With all these running backs, does that hurt? I guess, does that hurt Ashton Jeanty in terms of there's so many running backs, we could wait on taking one, take one in the later rounds. And for me, if Ashton Jeanty is the top running back prospect, if he is one of the top players in the draft in general, you're not going to wait on taking him. Now, if you're a team like the Raiders that just needs a jolt when it comes to more offensive talent, maybe you're in a position where it's like, all right, we're taking him because he's the best player at that position. We were, and they also were not a very good running team last year. They were not. I'm saying that nicely because they were ranked last, right? Like if you're the Cowboys, if you're the Steelers, if you're some of these other teams that maybe need a running back, I don't think you're as desperate. Because you do have offensive talent. Like the Cowboys, they have one of the best receivers in the league in CeeDee Lamb. The Steelers, they traded for DK Metcalf. They have George Pickens. They're not... yes, the Cowboys do need a running back, and yes, the Steelers maybe need more offensive talent, but they're not desperate like the Raiders are. Like the Raiders need more to that offense. It can't just be, Brock Bowers and... Jacoby Myers. Now, you added Geno Smith. That's an upgrade. It's not a significant upgrade, but it is an upgrade. But the running back room last year, you had Amir Abdullah, you had Zamir White, Alexander Madison, Sincere McCormick. They need to add to that running back room, and they will. They could add a couple because there's so many running backs. You could add Jeanty, and you could also draft another one at some point. Then again, they did sign Mostert, so maybe they don't do that because they do need more than just, but I'm just throwing that out there. So, yeah, I don't think Jeanty's stock is going to be affected because, there's a ton of running backs. I think he's going to go within the first 10 picks. But only time will tell. Only time will tell. But, we got a few weeks. It's going to be interesting, to see what happens. I think you're definitely going to see some teams trade. Like I'm talking about just the first night. You're talking about teams are going to be moving up. Teams are going to be moving down. I think you're going to see some of that. I'm curious to see if any teams are going to try to make their way into the top 3. But we will have to wait and see. Look, I want the Giants to get Travis Hunter. That's the bottom line. And if they don't, it is what it is. But I think for the Giants, the best thing for them to do is take one of these elite players that can help you win day one and then turn your attention to a quarterback in the later rounds. Because especially what they did. They signed Russell Wilson. You signed Jameis Winston. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win a lot of games, but still, I think that's how they should approach this. And I think that's what they're going to end up doing. I know there are reports that might not be the case. They'll still take a quarterback, but I think that's what they should do. That's my opinion. But let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we'll talk some baseball. We will talk about Rob Manfred and his thoughts on the Torpedo bats and why it's good for the game. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, commenting on the Torpedo bats and why it's good for the game. So, yeah, Rob Manfred said that it's good for they're good for baseball, and I think the main thing is because it's making headlines, or was making headlines. Obviously, it's kind of cooled off now, but this was in a Q&A. He said, "I believe that issues like the Torpedo bat and the debate around it demonstrate the fact that baseball still occupies a unique place in our culture, because people get into a complete frenzy over something that's really nothing at the end of the day. The bats comply with the rules. Players have actually been moving the sweet spot around in bats for years, but it just demonstrates that something about the game is more important than is captured by television ratings or revenue or any of those things when you have the discussions and debates about it." So, yeah, I mean, look, we talked about this when we first, discussed the Torpedo bat controversy, but, baseball is kind of taking a back seat to other sports, right? And baseball needs something to get people talking about it. And these Torpedo bats did that, because you had, Dave Portnoy of Barstool talk about it, television networks are talking about it, everything. And that's what baseball needs. And baseball wants more offense. And this is a way of doing that. Now, just to bring up the Yankees for a second, again, I want to say this. Look at what's happened in recent days. The offense has kind of cooled off a little bit. So it was not the Torpedo bats. It was the pitching that they were going against. Because you see what Zach Gallen did to them, although he did get roughed up last night against the Orioles. That wasn't good for me in fantasy. And then you also see what happened yesterday against Detroit, who's got good pitching, and they're going to be going up against Tariq Skubal today in a couple of hours, and then Jack Flaherty tomorrow. Their offense cooled off because of good pitching. And, so that whole thing could get put to bed. I just wanted to bring that up. But, yeah, I mean, when you got the commissioner saying that, I know some people complain about Manfred, and I have my issues as well. Like, I'm not a big fan of the Ghost Runner. But, I think the pitch clock was a great addition to the game. I agree with that. But, my main thing was it's just how the Astros scandal was handled. Because the players didn't really receive any repercussions for it. Now, you could also say Manfred had his hands tied because, it was going to be hard to, hand down punishments to the players. But I don't know. It rubs a lot of people the wrong way with just how that was all handled. And I get that. Because, again, I'm one of those people. But, like I said, the pitch clock, great addition to the game. The games are now 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And I really don't notice it when I'm even at the games. You really don't notice it until you leave and you're like, wow, that game went really fast. So, yeah, it's just baseball is going to need this because we are heading, and I hear it, especially where I'm from, in sports talk radio here, there is going to be a work stoppage. And it's not going to be like the one from last time. This one could really extend into the season and could lead to possibly no season in 2027. That's why you really got to enjoy these next 2 years because who knows if there's going to be baseball after that. I'm going to try to remain positive because they were able to get something done the last time this happened. However, it's going to be a little different. The negotiations are going to be different because you hear salary cap because of these contracts that are being given out and just how it's just, these smaller market teams, they just can't compete with that. So it's concerning. That's concerning. But, these torpedo bats, hey, they got people talking about baseball. So, anything that can help baseball get themselves in the news again, they're going to take it. Now, it would be different if these were illegal, but they're not. It's part of the game. If they weren't, they'd be gone. You wouldn't see them. And like I said, Manfred even said they have been used for years. It's just when the Yankees are hitting all these home runs and you see 3 players hit 3 home runs in a row on 3 pitches, and Jazz Chisholm is hitting home runs and Anthony Volpe is hitting home runs. It's just, you're like, what is going on here? Yankees were facing the right team at the right time. That's what it is. As simple as that. But ultimately, look, it comes down to the hitter. You got to hit the ball. If you don't make contact, the torpedo bat doesn't do anything. And nobody was making, and I have Ellie De La Cruz up here. Nobody was making a big deal about the start he's gotten off to so far. Because he doesn't play for the Yankees. It was a Yankee bias. And like I said, the offense has cooled off. Haven't looked great the last couple days. And I don't think it's going to get any better in this series against Detroit. So, yeah, no, it is interesting. It is a, people talk about it being a scandal. It's not. It's not. It's a non-scandal. But it's got people talking about baseball. Got people talking about baseball. And it's interesting because, Judge doesn't use them. I don't know if Ohtani uses them. I don't know if he uses it. Let's see. Ohtani, I was just about to say. I see a quote from Ohtani, and he says, "I don't think I'd suddenly start using it." So that's the two of the best hitters in the sport, and they either haven't used them or not, or just not gonna use them at all. I don't think Juan Soto's using them either. So, it depends on the player, Giancarlo Stanton, I'm pretty sure, was using it, and that's why, he was hitting all those home runs in the postseason. Also because he's a good postseason player. It's not just the bat, but yeah. So Judge and Ohtani are not using them though, because they don't need it. They don't need it. Juan Soto doesn't need it. These guys don't need it. Now, it's going to be interesting, to see players using it in, let's say, the home run derby. Hopefully the home run derby is, who even won the home run derby last year? I don't even remember who won it. I don't even remember. I have to go back and I have to look it up. If someone knows, just let me know in the comments, because but. And, it's not like, again, this stuff is different than, the sticky stuff with pitchers. Right? But, I don't know. It would have been interesting had they kept the sticky stuff. But they didn't want to. They did not want to. And also, Manfred talked about, I wanted to bring up the ABS system that they're going to implement. So, it could get implemented in 2026. Now, I do think that is what's going to end up happening. But it's all dependent on Players Association negotiations during the bargaining year. As my dog starts barking. But there's possibility of expansion, too. He hopes to at least have picked the cities for expansion teams by his planned retirement in 2029. That's right. He's going to be retiring soon. Well, got 4 more years, but that is going to happen at some point as well. So, and then as for the games today, I'm going to kind of go through it. So, the Yankees are going to be playing the Tigers early, again, because of the weather. There was snow yesterday. It's going to be the same thing tomorrow. Carlos Carrasco against Tariq Skubal. Skubal actually has not done well so far. He's 0-2 with a 5.91 ERA, but it's going to change today. White Sox and the Guardians, Marlins and the Mets. Mets are 7-3 right now. They've been playing well. Dodgers lost to the Nationals yesterday, so they've dropped back-to-back games. Who would have thought? 9-3 on the season. Blue Jays and Red Sox continue their series. Angels are 6-3, going up against the Rays. Phillies against the Braves. Yeah, that National League East pick not looking good so far. They're 1-8, the Braves, on the season. Rangers and the Cubs, both teams are playing well. The Twins and the Royals, Brewers and the Rockies. After that rough start by the Brewers, they're 5-5. Orioles and the Diamondbacks will continue their series. Orioles won last night. I referenced that. Astros and Mariners. Reds and Giants. Giants are 8-2 on the year, and then the Padres and the A's. Padres are 9-2 on the year. That National League West, very good division. Very strong division so far in the early going. Could change, but that's kind of where we're at right now. And the Diamondbacks, are in 4th, and then you got the Rockies. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Torpedo bat stuff. What Rob Manfred had to say. Hey, it's bottom line is this: they're legal. They're not going anywhere yet. Now, maybe at some point they do get banned, like the sticky stuff, but right now, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. So we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we will talk about the Cowboys trading for Joe Milton. We are going to talk about that, the impact of that deal. It was made last week. We didn't talk about it. We will talk about it on the next segment. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Cowboys trading for quarterback Joe Milton. Acquired him from the Patriots. So the Cowboys, they traded for Joe Milton. They acquired him and a 7th-round pick from the Patriots in exchange for a 5th-round pick. He was drafted in the 6th round in 2024 by the Patriots out of Tennessee. He's 25 years old. 6'5", and he began his college career at Michigan, transferred to Tennessee in 2021. He was the starting quarterback for them in 2023, 20 touchdowns and 5 picks, 292 rushing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns. He had over 2,700 yards passing. He did play in one regular season game for the Patriots, and that was in the season finale against the Bills. He went 22 of 29. Passing, 241 yards, 1 passing touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown as well. Now, the Cowboys did this because they needed a backup quarterback, right? They needed a backup quarterback. Cooper Rush signed with the Ravens. I think they still have Will Greer on the roster, but they needed an upgrade at the position. Oh, and they also didn't bring back Trey Lance, who signed with the Chargers recently. So I like the move for the Cowboys. I like the move for the Cowboys because I think Joe Milton could be a good backup to Dak Prescott. Also might give him an opportunity to start because, in case Dak gets hurt. Dak is, of course, coming off of the hamstring injury. Now, in terms of do I think this could lead to Dak getting benched at some point and Joe Milton takes his job? Well, I mean, that's up to Dak Prescott. If Dak Prescott's not playing well, if Dak Prescott is playing horrendous, maybe you see that. But they gave Dak Prescott a big contract. We would really have to see Dak Prescott play horrible, like I said, for him to, get benched and then Joe Milton comes in. But like I said, I think in terms of, a backup quarterback, you like the move. Maybe down the line, you could see, Joe Milton getting his opportunity with the Cowboys. But, then again, it could be like Trey Lance and you never really see him at all. But I think it's just because everyone's like, wow, Joe Milton, he impressed in the preseason and also, like I said, in the game against the Bills, could he come in and, compete with Dak Prescott for his job? No. That's not going to happen. But I think it's a big deal just because, it's the Cowboys and, this is something that they needed to, they needed to address the backup quarterback position. From the Patriots' perspective, obviously, you have your starting quarterback in Drake May. They're moving forward with him. He was going to be he's the starter. Maybe keeping Joe Milton around. You don't want to have that hanging over a young quarterback. two young quarterbacks you would have there. So, I mean, I like the deal more so for Dallas than I do for. I mean, the Patriots get a 5th-round pick out of it. So, actually, I wanted to look at the Patriots depth chart because I don't know. Did they sign? Oh yeah, because they signed Josh Dobbs, right? Let me just double check. Okay. So yeah, they signed Josh Dobbs. So yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, you got another backup quarterback in there, so this, like I said, this was a move that the Cowboys needed to make. Maybe not necessarily trading for Joe Milton. Maybe you try to. I mean, I don't know if they wanted to sign another veteran. They had Cooper Rush in their system for a while, but now you got a younger quarterback on the roster. That's really what it comes down to. I don't think this is going to affect Dak. Now, you want to see Dak Prescott come back and play well because, last year, even before he got hurt, wasn't playing great. I mean, the Cowboys as a team weren't playing great either. So, I mean, I don't know if we're going to see a Tony Romo to Dak Prescott situation. I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, it's also an overreaction because Joe Milton, he showed you something. He has shown you something in his limited playing time. But you could also say it's in preseason. He was also playing against the Bills' backups, which basically was a preseason game. How is Joe Milton going to look? Let's say Dak Prescott gets hurt. How is he going to look against the Eagles' first strings? How is he going to look then? But I like the move. I like the move just because they needed a backup quarterback, and let's see what the Cowboys do. Because there are things they need to address in the draft. Running back, maybe offensive line, maybe the secondary. The Cowboys right now, they are, this division is not a cakewalk. Now it's really not a cakewalk because now you got the Commanders. It was really between the Cowboys and the Eagles. Now you had the Commanders in. So this is going to be a big year for them. If they could stay healthy, if they can make the right moves in the draft, I mean, I think they'll be a competitive team next year if everybody stays healthy. But right now, you had 2 teams from the NFC East make it to the championship game, and they were not one of them. All these years of the Cowboys making the playoffs and, having first-round buys, they couldn't even get to a championship game. And the Commanders, in a first year of a new regime, rookie quarterback, they go all the way to the championship game. And you would have thought Dak Prescott in his rookie year with that offense that they could have did it. And then Aaron Rodgers happened. And they lost. So, I listen, I would not have given Dak Prescott that deal. But then it's like, what's the alternative? What would they have done then? I don't know. I because I think Dak Prescott is a solid quarterback, but he is not worth the money that he's being given right now. He's not. And I think, this is a big year for him. And I'm going to say it every year until he actually, goes further in the playoffs. They make the playoffs and they go further because, his rookie year was his best shot. They had one of the top offenses in the league with prime Ezekiel Elliott behind that offensive line. That was the year to do it. And then, they've had good years, but, they get knocked down in the first round. They get knocked down in the second round. And now the division's tougher. They missed the playoffs altogether And like I said, you had two teams go to the NFC Championship game in your division, and one of them won the Super Bowl. So now Joe Milton doesn't help that. I mean, it just gives you a backup quarterback because they lost theirs. And they were not going to go into this year with Will Grier as the only other quarterback on the roster besides Dak Prescott. That was not happening. But let me know what you guys think. Do you like this move for the Patriots or the Cowboys? Again, I guess it's better for the Cowboys. But the Patriots get a 5th-round pick out of it. Drake May is their starter moving forward. Joe Milton really wasn't going to get an opportunity. But there were a lot of other teams, I think, that were interested. I would have liked to have seen maybe the Giants get him, possibly. There's a lot of teams that, look at him as maybe being a starter. And maybe he'll get that opportunity. I don't know if it's going to be, in Dallas, but unless Dak Prescott gets hurt. That's really the only way he's going to get his shot, is if Dak gets hurt. Because I don't think Dak Prescott his level of play is just going to fall off to the point where it's like, all right, we cannot start him. We have to put in Joe Milton. So, but you know what? We'll see. We'll see him in spring training. We'll see him in the preseason, with what's left of the preseason. Because beyond 2025, I mean, who knows? Who knows? That 18-game season is coming. It's coming. So, all right. So we are going to take our final break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will do our final season overview. We went through every single team in the NFL. This time, we are going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. We will go through their season, what they have done in the offseason, and that will get us to the end of the show for today. So, for one final time today, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are going to go over the Kansas City Chiefs 2024 season, how it all went down, what they did in the offseason. So the Kansas City Chiefs, once again, made it back to the Super Bowl. They had the best record in the AFC. They won 15 games. And you would think, wow, they were really good this year, or that year. But a lot of the wins you could point to and say, yeah, they got lucky, or they were helped. I know some people will say that. But, look, the Chiefs are still a good team. But they weren't doing it how they were in years past, right? Like Patrick Mahomes did not have his greatest season. He had 26 touchdowns to 11 picks. Didn't pass for 4,000 yards. The Chiefs really didn't run the football that well. Their leading receiver was Travis Kelce, who had under 1,000 yards. But they won 15 games. And the season started off on the right foot for them. And I say foot. Isaiah Likely's foot was out of bounds. So they won that game by a touchdown. That could have went differently. The Bengals, they were trailing in that game. They got a takeaway, a scoop and score. It looked like they were going to lose, and then there was a pass interference call that led to Butker kicking a game-winning field goal. Then you also had them getting a fourth down, fourth down stop against the Falcons. They won 22-17. Then they won 17-10 against the Chargers, and that was the game where Rashee Rice tore his ACL. There was a friendly fire collision with Patrick Mahomes, and so he was out for the year. Then they beat the Saints by a couple of scores. There was a lot of one-score games with the Chiefs. A lot. So they went into the bye, and they were 5-0. Come out of the bye, we got the Super Bowl rematch against the 49ers. Brock Purdy threw 3 picks. Mahomes threw 2 picks. That was not a great game, but they were still able to pick up the win. They ran the ball for almost 200 yards against the Niners. They beat the Raiders 27-20. They beat the Bucs in overtime 30-24. They got the ball in overtime. Kareem Hunt scored the game-winning touchdown. You had the blocked field goal against the Broncos to win the game, 16-14. And then they went up against the Bills in Week 11. They were 9-0. And, Josh Allen had the signature, 4th and 2 run for the touchdown to put them up, by 8, and then they kicked the extra point. Mahomes, I think, threw a pick on the first drive of the game. He actually had 3 touchdowns in the game. But, the turnovers were not good. And the Chiefs, they lost the game. But then they come back against the Panthers. They were up by a couple scores. The Panthers came back in the game, but Chiefs went down the field, kicked the game-winning field goal. Then you also had the bobbled snap with the Raiders. They ended up winning 19-17 there. Double doink against the Chargers to win that game. The Browns had 6 turnovers, 5 turnovers in the game against them. They won 21-7. Mahomes hurt his ankle. So, then they were like, oh, well, then they play on Saturday. Is he going to be able to play? And he did. They beat the Texans. And that was when they started to look. I thought they started to look like they were getting into a rhythm because they got Hollywood Brown back. Then they beat up on the Steelers. They won 29-10. Mahomes, 320 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And then I was like, they're going to do it again, aren't they? And then we don't count the Broncos game because they were playing their backups. But they beat the Texans. C.J. Stroud was sacked 8 times in the game. Very competitive AFC Championship game against the Bills. They were able to get the win there. And then we get to the Super Bowl, and just everything went wrong for them in that game. Mahomes was not getting great protection, had a couple of interceptions. One of them was a pick 6 to Cooper DeJean. I mean, they were down by so much. And, because they were the Chiefs, I gave them that respect. I was like, this game is not over yet. I started to get that feeling after the Cooper DeJean pick 6, though. I was like, I don't know if they're going to come back from this. But it's not over yet. But then the other interception happened, and they scored a touchdown off of that, the Eagles. But, yeah, I mean, that was one of the worst games I've ever seen Mahomes play. I definitely look at him and the Chiefs differently after that because now this is the second time in a Super Bowl where they got dominated. Xavier Worthy had a good Super Bowl performance, but everything went wrong in that game. I thought the defense kept them in it. It's just the turnovers became too much. And yeah, they ended up losing 40-22, but it was more lopsided than that. But yeah, looking at the regular season, we went over Mahomes' stats. Kareem Hunt ended up being their leading rusher. He had 200 rushing yards in the game, or in over the season. 200 rushes on the season. 728 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco got hurt during the year. He came back. Didn't look the same. Hopefully, with the whole offseason, he's healthy. He'll be back to being himself. Travis Kelce, like I said, was their leading receiver. He only had 3 touchdowns, 97 receptions, 823 receiving yards. Had a very disappointing Super Bowl. Xavier Worthy, 6 touchdowns on the year. Got better as the year went on, and he had a very good Super Bowl performance. 59 receptions for 638 yards in the regular season. DeAndre Hopkins, acquired from the Titans. He had 41 receptions, 437 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Noah Gray had 5 touchdowns on the season. Defensively, Nick Bolton had 3 sacks. Drew Tranquill. George Karlaftis had 8. Chris Jones only had 5 sacks on the year. But yeah, the Chiefs, their defense was still solid. And, looking at the stats specifically, you look at their defense. Their defense was ranked 9th in total yards allowed per game, 8th in rushing yards allowed per game, 18th against the pass, which is not great, 4th in points allowed per game, 18th in sacks, and 12th in interceptions. And then for their offense was really just middle of the pack. Total yards per game, they were 16th. Passing yards per game, they were 14th. 22nd in rushing yards per game, and then 15th in points per game. So, the offense, again, when Mahomes first became the quarterback of the Chiefs, they were an offensive juggernaut. That has not been the case the last couple of years. And despite that, they have still made it back to the Super Bowl. Now, in the offseason, they signed Elijah Mitchell. They signed Jalen Moore, both from the 49ers. They signed corner Christian Fulton from the Chargers. They brought back Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. They also signed Robert Tonyan, another tight end. They signed Gardner Minshew. Brought him in to be the backup. They did trade Joe Thuney. The Chiefs are going to have to revamp the offensive line in the draft. They are definitely going to have to. I think that position will be addressed at some point. So, yeah, you got that. I don't know. I feel like with receiver, you got Rashee Rice, you got Xavier Worthy, but I don't know. I feel like they still are missing something on offense. I don't know. Maybe in 2025 their offense will be back to being explosive again. Defense, I could see them maybe addressing a position here or there, but, running back, because of this rich running back class, maybe they add another running back. But, look, the Chiefs are going to be fine. They are still going to be a very good team in 2025. But, like I said, I do look at them a little bit differently. But everybody at the end of the Super Bowl, see, they were frauds. It's up to these teams now, when they go up against the Chiefs, you got to bring it. Because the Chiefs capitalize on your mistakes. So, Anthony's saying hello in the chat. What's up? We're talking Kansas City Chiefs here. Happy to see you tuning in towards the end of the show here. But, yeah, the Chiefs are going to be fine. Now, going forward, we'll see how long Travis Kelce continues to play. I was willing to give him another chance after 2023 because he had such a good postseason and, they won the Super Bowl. But, yeah, he does not look like the same player. He doesn't. And especially in the Super Bowl. Now, next year, could he prove us wrong and he goes out there and he has a great year? Maybe. But, he's going to have to show it. And, yeah, it's not like he can't make plays, but he can't do it at a consistent level. I think that's really what it comes down to. I don't think there's absolutely nothing left for him. No. But I do think that, he's not the same. He's not the same player that can take over a game like he was. So. But, yeah, it's a long offseason for the Chiefs, though. Having to get beat up like that in the Super Bowl again. That was worse than what happened with Tampa. It really was. But that's a credit to the Eagles. The Eagles are very good. They deserve that. And it's not like the Chiefs are coming in as an offensive juggernaut. Their offense was not very good throughout the year. But you figured because they were the Chiefs, because you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, that they were going to do it. And they didn't. So, yeah, we'll see what the Chiefs do in the draft. They'll be picking towards the end of the first round. We'll see what they end up doing. We'll find out soon enough. But that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows on the network as well. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the videos on both YouTube channels. Make sure to check us out wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't